Hey guys, how are you doing? Thanks so much for joining today. Our webinar on driving user engagement in the mental health and wellness space. Joining us today is Corey from Headspace. She's a lead product manager over there, and really has been doing some incredible work on the platform ever since she's been there. Corey, thank you so much for joining us. Pleasure to have you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Audrey, for having me.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, most people are very familiar with Headspace, hopefully. You guys are one of the, best mental health and wellness apps that are out there, at least one of my favorites personally, having used quite a few of them. But I'd love for you to give a little bit maybe of introduction about Headspace in general, but then also about yourself, your role, and what you and your team are doing a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So again, my name is Corey. I use she, her pronouns. I've been at Headspace for about 4 years now. In March, it feels like a long time and no time all at the same time. But yeah, I mean, Headspace is one of those incredible apps that just I think has had such a profound legacy in just our culture. Right? It was the
Yeah.
first meditation app in the App Store. So Headspace has been around for a really long time. We started as a meditation app, but what really drew me to Headspace almost 4 years ago was this hypothesis that if an app is going to survive, it really has to be able to withstand the test of time and meet the needs of its current members, right? And so for me, I was seeing this shift in our society to really think about and see mental health as not just something for some people, but something for everyone, right?
Yeah.
I think the beginning of the pandemic really, I think, tested all of our mental health,
For sure.
and mine included. And so for me at the time, it was a time where I sought out therapy again for the first time in a few years. And I just saw the benefits of how it changed my mental health state, but then how that had outcomes in my own personal life, in my friendships, in how I saw and viewed the world around me and its people.
Yeah.
And I was really curious about what that would look like to help build more products that provided that same possibility to others at scale. And so when an opportunity at Headspace came up, I was really excited to join. And like I said, I really believe there was this world in which Headspace could not only build on its foundations of meditation and mindfulness, which I think also plays such a key role
Yeah.
for a lot of our members still today, but also how can we expand that offering to, again, include modalities such as coaching, as all the way up to, therapy and psychiatry as well, knowing that everyone has a different need and has different preferences when it comes to receiving mental health care.
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that's huge. I love that, your own experience with your own mental health decided to push you into that. I have quite a few friends actually who've gone into health tech for the same reason, right? And they really see the benefit for themselves and obviously want us to help others achieve the same, which is super cool. I love that. Um, speaking of your own like role in Headspace and how you have transitioned over time, I'm curious like what all teams you've been a part of or what has been the focus that you guys have really been driving on your teams.
Yeah, so when I first joined Headspace, I was focused more on the growth side. Most of my experience is in growth product management, which now I think is more common to see. When I first started out, growth is kind of like this new hot thing. But yeah, I started in growth, was really thinking about how we activate our members and create really sticky experiences. When you're thinking about mental health, that commitment and adherence to continuing on your journey is so important, right? You're
For sure.
only going to see the benefit if you're coming back and you're actually doing the work.
Yeah.
And then about 2 years into my experience, I was then moved over onto the other side of the house after we had acquired a company called Ginger, which some folks might have been familiar with, that had been able to figure out how to create virtual coaching, psychiatry, and therapeutic services. So when we acquired them, we kind of had this issue of like, how do we start to integrate these two houses? And so I was tasked with starting this new hybrid squad that started to think about how do we measure what we call outcomes
Yeah.
across all of our modalities. So content, coaching, therapy, psychiatry, and in the future, things like our AI companion. And how do we really start to not just focus on what our members are doing and what we're driving them towards, but are the things that we're driving them towards actually leading them to their desired outcomes? Are they seeing improvements in their sleep? Are they decreasing their symptoms of anxiety and depression? And so most of my work over the last year and a half or so has been around that. And it's just been incredible for me to get to learn alongside experts. So I work very closely with our psychiatrists, our clinicians, our coaches, and to see firsthand how they do their work, how that helps our members, and then how we even think about really kind of being a first in the industry to one, offer all these services, but then think about how they play together to create a stratified care system that then again, we're able to hold ourselves accountable to, are we actually doing what we're saying we're doing for our members, for our partners who pay for our members to have access to their platform as well.
Yeah.
That's really where the industry is heading, is you have to be able to show that the engagement that you're driving your members to actually has an outcome. So, and then about, what I'd say, like 6 months ago, I was then moved back over into engagement. So I boomeranged back. But I don't really see there being a differentiation between the two. I think engagement and outcomes really plays hand in hand. So I think for me, that's really been, I would say, a benefit for me to have kind of been on both sides of that experience, because now whenever I think about activating and retaining a member, I'm actually thinking about it from the outcome. And that really drives how we think about our strategy and what we're even driving members to in their first day.
That's super relevant, like that's exactly the same way I think about it, because as you know, like when we provide social features or like community features to people and our clients end up building a community, oftentimes they're like, when a client comes in there, the first thing is like, hey, what are you trying to achieve? And they're just saying, okay, we're just trying to achieve engagement, or we're just trying to achieve retention. But when we're working with them, we really try and connect it to like a quantifiable business goal at the end of the day. Like even that engagement, how is that engagement affecting, let's say, the revenue per that user, right? More relevant, like, and how is it that you are not only delivering value that's actually for the business, but actually, like you said, also delivering value to the user. I think there's a couple of really cool points that you had in there. I'd love to follow up on. I mean, it's kind of like a two-part question, and feel free to take your time, because the first question is, I'm sure it's going to be intense. But I'm curious, like, after doing all these changes, after seeing all this transition, one, in this mental health and wellness space and this sort of app, what do you see as one, like the key pillars to kind of having that engagement? Because like you said, one of the biggest things is to make sure people are able to come back and people are able to form this habit and actually do this to better themselves. And then the second question is, I know because you said you focused a lot on making sure end users actually get results, right? And so the second part is really not just what pillars you have in place, but then what sort of feedback system do you guys have in place? How are you actually making it so that users are able to share with you what worked for them, what didn't, and what is it, the key little things that you're doing there that sets you apart?
Yeah, great questions. So to address your first one around like how we organize ourselves and create the structure, we actually do use pillars. So it's funny that you use that nomenclature. Yes. But we've organized ourselves into kind of like three pillars, if you will. One is around growth. So again, how do we get more members to understand and to be exposed and have awareness to the value that Headspace has to offer today? Then my pillar, which is around creating these unique care pathways, what we call innovative care pathways, to get the members to the right value to help them reach their desired outcomes and goals. And then we have another pillar that's really focused on supporting our supply and demand of our human delivered care. So all of our coaches, our therapists, our psychiatrists, and also equipping them to have the right tools to help their members get better, have the right data to understand if a treatment plan is working, if it's not, if a member needs a new care plan, and how to get them back on track if they're off track. So that's kind of how we organize ourselves, which I think leads me to your next question, which is like, how do we create those loops? So we have a few ways implicitly and explicitly today that we collect feedback from our members. So we use a few standardized measurements that are actually used today. So if you go to see a therapist, they might assess you using what's called the PHQ-9, which is how you would assess for anxiety. And then we also have the GAD. The GAD is for anxiety and the PHQ-9 is for depression. Gotcha. And so those are like one of a few different measures that you'll see if you use Headspace today. We'll typically try to quantify that at the beginning of your journey, so we understand kind of what your baseline is and where you're at. And then we'll collect it throughout your journey and administer that to see like how are you trending over time. So that's like one of many explicit ways that we're collecting that data. Then there's also implicit things, right? right, that we can see in the members like usage or lack of usage of our product, to see if maybe, hey, like some of the things we're recommending aren't necessarily sticking or sticky enough for the member to keep them coming back, or hey, it actually looks like they're decreasing. Maybe the things that we're recommending aren't the right things, or maybe they need more care. And I think that's the coolest part about Headspace is now we don't just have content, and content for a lot of our members is enough, and that self-guided care is enough to meet their needs. But for some of our members, it's not enough. And that's where we can actually be able to make recommendations like, hey, maybe it's time to talk to a coach or to talk to a therapist and better understand what your options are. And so our system is something that we're really investing in, is how can we help really kind of bring that stratified care model to life by pointing members to the right place at the right time, and building out more of those implicit signals on the back end for us to kind of know where a member's at and when we need to do more for them.
Nice. Okay. So basically a super robust system when it comes to being able to segregate your users and being able to understand the patterns that they're having and then adjust recommendations accordingly. And I guess now, like you said, ever since you guys have really expanded your product offering a little bit, like having those different avenues in order to enable users, no matter what actually like they need. They might need an actual therapist. They might need self-guided, counseling or courses, etc., and learning. And either way, I think that's probably beneficial. That's super cool. I like that.
And I think I'm like, when I say it, it sounds so simple, but it's actually so complex to do it well, and to also understand and acknowledge that even if we make the recommendation, the member might not be ready to receive that recommendation. And so how do we still keep them engaged and give them choice and autonomy, knowing that like, hey, we think coaching or therapy might be the right next step for you, but also here's a few other options in case that's not right for you, you're not ready, or you're not in this, like we use the trans-theoretical model of change, which basically assesses someone's like readiness for change. And if you're not ready to make change, you're not going to utilize right? So you have a lot of things have to line up for this kind of golden path, if you will, to actually happen. And so I think that's our, the biggest challenges in the industry is how do you keep members motivated and engaged when they're maybe not ready to engage with the thing that you think is the next best step for them, and providing them again with a lot of that autonomy and choice and educating them so that hopefully one day maybe it clicks and they're willing or they're ready to actually engage with some of those recommendations you have for them.
Yeah, that's super interesting. And it's cool that you phrase it this way as well, because I like that the fact that like at one point like Headspace used to be what I would call like a single player app, right? Where like you yourself are there, you're going your self-guided tours, you're doing your different lessons, and you're actually helping yourself. Now it's really transitioning to more of a multiplayer mode where like, yes, you can interact, let's say, with coaches, therapists. You can really seek out that sort of help that you need specifically. So it's interesting to see. I'd really love to learn a bit more about like, let's say this coaches, therapist side. How are you guys doing this at the moment? Is it all digital, all online through the app itself? What sort of interactions are you enabling, let's say, users to do with these coaches or therapists? And if so, are you doing any for users to be able to interact with each other, or is that something that you are thinking about, etc.?
Yeah, great question. So today, as I mentioned, we have coaching. It's mostly text-based, but for some of our B2B clients, we've actually started to roll out video coaching, which we're really excited about, knowing that, again, everyone has different preferences. Some people like the idea of the anonymity of texting and being able to have that control over their personhood. And then some people prefer having that face-to-face communication, right? And so, again, providing more choice for our members. Then we also have therapy and psychiatry that's offered through video coaching as well. So all of our services today are digital, which is what we found to be what our members want. They want to be able to, again, have more control over when and how and where they're working with their coaches. It also provides them with more options, right? So if you're someone who is maybe not in a coastal city where there is a lot of diversity, you might not be able to find someone who has the same life experiences or shared values that you do. And we find that choice is really important to a lot of our members when they're thinking about choosing their providers, so that when they're going into those sessions, they feel baseline baseline that they're already heard and understood and seen. And so being able to provide these services digitally gives our members a lot more optionality when selecting their providers and engaging with our services. And we hear that in the feedback that we receive from our providers today. But again, that's like one of many modalities. As you mentioned, something else that we're always thinking about and exploring is like, how can we provide more peer-to-peer opportunities? There's a lot of research that shows and supports that that's also, something that can help improve someone's mental health and their journey. And we think there's a lot of value in that. Again, coming back to that whole idea of hearing and working with someone with shared life experiences or values, especially when we think about some of our more marginalized communities, being able to, again, see someone who has those experiences, has, walked some of that same walk. And so what we did I think like a year ago or so, we launched our first instance of what we call community. So today, if you go into the app and you try any of our courses, you'll see a little community threads tag, and you'll be able to opt in to see commentary from others as they're going through that journey of completing a course, be able to add your own commentary, react to others' commentary. And what we're really excited about is that we've been able to scale that up in a way that also provides and promotes safety. And so when we actually use the same tooling that we use to triage and potentially flag any like SI risk or other like risk of like harm or harm to others. And so a lot of that is powered through that in-house tooling that we've created and is moderated by our live QA team as well. And so super excited about that. Again, it's just kind of the beginning, but we're hoping that, again, we can provide more ways for our community to support one another, knowing that some of our community members have been around with us from the beginning. And so they have a lot of insight and value to provide our members, and will help us be able to fill some of the gaps that we currently can't fill today.
Fair. I think, some really interesting points there. I think, yes, one of the biggest things is obviously resourcing and like the actual bandwidth that you and your team and all of your therapists and experts have. And, like you said, having community members or people who have been actively using the platform, using the product, who are, let's say, super users that are very passionate about it, giving them a chance to participate is something, I think is extremely important. And we see this a lot. Like you said, this happens in most wellness communities. It happens in a lot of other types as well. I mean, yes, for example, when we work with Noom, as a client who's a health and fitness client, their biggest thing is to drive engagement by having these super users actually own certain groups, moderate certain groups, right? Now that the community's been live for 3 years, they need less of it on their side, or content coming from their side, and more content coming from super users as well as experts or influencers that they've sort of built this community ecosystem around. Kind of reduces the burden on their side as well. I see a couple of questions in the chat. I see Josh is asking if we can get a demo. I don't think we have one at the current moment, Josh, but I will connect with you. I'll connect you and Corey afterwards. So I'm sure she can help you out with that. So you can check out a demo of Headspace. If you need a demo of Social Plus, do let me know, and I'm happy to help with that as well. I see Sean's asking how you're specifically driving engagement on that community or in that thread space. Maybe if you have any insight into that, Corey, that'd be great.
Yeah. So again, we're still in our preliminary phases of utilizing community as a lever for driving engagement for Headspace. But today I can share that for members who do engage with our community threads, we do see an increase in future usage of the app as well as longer term retention. And that really goes back to our hypothesis that if members feel less alone in their experience, and I think Avi even mentioned this, it felt kind of single player historically on Headspace, but just even being able to see like, hey, there's other people that are actually using this and they're sharing their life experiences. A lot of our members are sharing very personal experiences about why they came to Headspace, how they're using Headspace, what they're going through. And so even, seeing members reacting to that, members really love to just feel like they're not alone. And again, going back to that, feeling really seen and heard in their experiences. And so even just implementing that alone, we've seen, again, improvements in both engagement and retention. But I think we're so excited to figure out how we can do more and potentially even help facilitate or allow some of our members to help facilitate more of that peer-based support in the future.
Yeah. And, there's so many ways to do it, whether it's like opening chat up between users, or even opening up discussion forums where like they can discuss certain group options. That's, for example, something we do in Noom. I know something you'd mentioned earlier was, like people want to also feel like this is a safe space where they can share openly. One of our clients, it's not actually in the mental health and wellness space, but they're in the financial education space. So their name is Your Juno, and they're a financial education and literacy app focused on women and non-binary people. Right. And one of the biggest things they do is, yes, the same way they have these lessons, and then after lessons, you can comment. And then separately, they have a community thread section where people can kind of add little discussions, share their stories, share their concerns, get advice. And I think the coolest thing they've done is they allow the user to post as themselves, or you can choose to post in anonymous mode. And when you post in anonymous mode, it'll just give you like a cool name like Funky Fox or something, and they'll have like a little animal emoji. And like the whole point is you shouldn't feel scared to share. This might be something where you've taken a loan and you're not able to pay it back, or you're losing your house, and these are real financial problems that are actually affecting people in their lives. And so they don't want to attach their name to it as much, but they still want to seek out guidance and support from other people. I think doing this through like anonymous versions is something that's very cool and beneficial for them, and definitely could be something I think to explore on the mental health and wellness side as well.
Yeah, and I saw Sean's follow-up question. So these are not prompted by Headspace. These are all of our users that, again, they're driving. We're very fortunate to have really deeply engaged members who are helping us lead the charge. And so all of the comments and the threads are purely driven by our community, and then moderated by us internally and the internal tools that we've created, as well as a live moderation team when those comments are flagged to us. So we really lean on our community to kind of self drive a lot of this engagement, which has been really cool to see.
That's so cool. That's very interesting that you mentioned that, because it's definitely not the experience everywhere. I will tell you that, right? Like you guys are very fortunate that you have one, because it's in the mental health space, that people are much more involved and motivated and want to share and help with other people. Two, really the fact that you guys have such a great product, and over the years you've built such an awesome user base that like they're now willing to participate once you've introduced the stuff. Just to kind of like set expectations a little bit, or to like help Sean understand a little bit that like it happens with some companies, with some it doesn't. A lot of times what I've found in our own personal experience is it takes like a ramp up period of probably 3 months to 6 months, where the balance kind of shifts, right? Initially at the launch, I'd say for most of our clients, 70 to 80% of the content is coming from the client side. Of course, it's not all coming from one profile of the company profile. They're coming from different people in the company. They're coming from some experts that they have. They're coming from some influencers they have. But at the start, that's really what is needed in order to get people actively engaged in discussions and try to prompt that. And then what we see is over the course of the life cycle of the community, maybe 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, depending on how many users they have and how active the discussion is, we see that shift completely, where then 70% of the content is UGC and like 30% of the content is coming from the company side. And that's when we really feel like when we reach that stage, we can have people like super users be moderators, right? And we can reduce that burden, and all in the pursuit of almost a self-sustaining community, right? Where you don't have to do as much. You are as much as a company, as the company, or as the brand, you are one member of the community, just like everyone else at that point. And I think that's kind of the end goal that people love to get to. Um, I see Josh also saying that he'd love to connect with you as well in the health and wellness space. So they definitely would love to get some advice from you. I think that'll be cool.
Yeah, and I
Yeah,
think one thing I would love to add is I think where you place your community really matters.
yeah,
So for us, it's after the value. A lot of our members who come to us the first time, even after that first meditation, they're hooked, right? Because they see the immediate value, especially because a lot of when you think about like who is downloading Headspace and when they're downloading it, it's probably in a moment of need, right? It's I'm having an anxiety attack in this moment, and
yeah,
I remember my friend told me about this app called Headspace, and I'm downloading it. And so they're coming in this like high need state. They're using
yeah,
a piece of our content. They're finding immediate relief, which helps them in that moment. And then we're saying, hey, like there's other people here that are experiencing the same thing. how did that go for you? Share with others. And so I think thinking about when your member is getting that value or that kind of like dose of goodness, and then inviting them into this community, like, hey, you just experienced the value, connect to others who are also on this journey with you as well. So I think being really intentional about where you place that in the journey, and not asking the member to do too much before you give. So our my ethos or kind of philosophy is always give before you ask or get. And so I think that's a really important thing to think about if you're thinking about implementing community into your apps.
No, I think that's an extremely good point. I think also like industry plays a big part in this, of course, right? Like for sure in the mental health and wellness industry. I know like, for example, when we work with some retail and e-commerce clients, right? They instead like to have it as a part of the shopping journey almost. So that like, let's say you're looking at a product on a page, instead of seeing reviews, which you might, you also see like, hey, see what people in the community are talking about this. And it'll show you relevant posts and discussions that people are having around it. Similarly, after you buy a product and it gets shipped to you and you normally would get a review thing, that's when they prompt them again of like, how's your experience shared in the community? So like you mentioned, afterwards is after the value for sure. For some people, I think before the value or in between as well, depending on your situation and how your user journey is laid out. But I couldn't agree more that like thinking about user journey placement and the touch points that you have to your community as a part of your traditional user journey, I think is one of the most important things to do, because a lot of times when people try and implement community, they'll also often implement it in like a segregated section on its own, right? And they'll have like a community tab and they're just expecting it to be active, or they'll even have it in a separate platform and they'll expect it to be active. But more often than not, they see that if it's in a separate platform, the activeness is really limited to asking support questions or like pointing out some feedback, etc. Versus if it's really ingrained in your journey, I think it plays a much more pivotal part.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Awesome. I know you mentioned earlier, so because keeping an eye on time and knowing that we have a limited amount of time, you did mention very briefly earlier about AI and the future. So I'm very curious to find out from you about what you, I think you named him Ebb. Ebb is your newest AI companion?
Yeah, so Ebb, for those who haven't had a chance to check it out, and I highly recommend if you currently are using Headspace or if you're not, to download Headspace, even just to test out Ebb, is our new, what we call it our empathetic AI companion. It's currently only available in English, and you have to be in the US, Australia, or Canada. But super proud of this tool. My dear friend, Matt Chester, who is a clinical psychologist himself, is the brains behind Ebb, and really, led with safety, privacy, and security. It's kind of like our key ethos for how we think about using and developing AI at Headspace. I think when I first started in the industry, there was a lot of kind of momentum around you have to be first to market in order to win. And I would actually say that nowadays I would flip that on its head, in that yes, there is like some sense of like timeliness with bringing things to market, but I actually think it's more important that you build trust, because those products, and especially with AI, are going to be the ones that withstand the test of time, right? In a world where I think there's a lot of distrust, a lot of mis and disinformation, and a lot of concerns around our security and privacy and safety. I think for us, we really wanted to make sure that what we were bringing to market could withstand the test of time. And given how regulated the healthcare space is, would also make people feel more comfortable to engage with something like Ebb, because we see a lot of potential opportunity in continuing to build out new functionality, and use cases around it. So today, if you come in and use Ebb, it's a way that you can explore your emotions. And you can also receive personalized recommendations. And we've just heard such great feedback so far from our member base about utilizing and engaging with Ebb, because sometimes you just need someone to talk through your feelings about, right? And to kind of get that non-biased feedback. And then, like I said, we also have built our own in-house kind of proprietary safety system that also is constantly assessing for risk and any potential flags for harm, that then allows us to provide recommendations to, more services, whether that's like, therapy, or whether it's to seek out outside support as well. So we're really proud about Ebb and what we've been able to develop so far, and excited about how we can continue to build on this really great foundation.
That's super cool. I love that you made that point though, because I think too many people are there's so many AI companies out there now. Like obviously because it's the next bubble, so everyone is like, let's try and make something AI or something AI that, and it really bothers me to no end. But like, I love it when I see people that are working on AI tools or AI creations that are actually delivering value. It's kind of one of the things that like I've advocated for internally so much, which is why like even with our like what we're working on in AI is similar, right? One to what you mentioned about like your moderation system. That's I think the biggest thing. So like because we work with again so many companies in the health and wellness space, but then also in like the gambling, betting space, the sports streaming space where there's so much trolling, there's so much like, spam that's coming normally, especially in like live chat channels that where we have live streams, that it became really important for us to focus on this, right? And I think for us having a practical use of AI where like we're actually delivering the sort of value, we've seen like the amount of manual moderation that's required for clients that are using the AI moderation system has like gone down 60 to 70%, you know? And like it really reduces the burden, not just the burden of resourcing, but let's be honest, like when it comes to content moderation, and maybe it's not as much prevalent on Headspace, but at least on a lot of the communities I see, like, and if we're talking about big social media, there's a actual pattern out there, right, of this leading to PTSD for those content moderators themselves because of what they're having to look at. So I think that's one really practical, useful way for us to be leveraging it right now. I think what you guys are doing is also super valuable. I'd love to see how the AI evolves, in therapy, in mental health and wellness, because everybody needs a therapist. I can advocate for that, or I would advocate for that, right? Like, even if you don't think you need one, it's beneficial at the same time to talk to a third party who's disconnected from your life and doesn't know anything, but can give you an objective opinion or viewpoint on certain things.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Hopefully, like your AI companions is with its evolution over time is going to be something that'll be quite a great companion to have for any one of us.
Yeah, and I think that's the important thing too, that we've really taken a firm stance is, Ebb is not a replacement for a therapist. We're not trying to replace human delivered care. And we also know that therapy is not accessible to everybody, right? Both from a cultural perspective, a financial perspective, time, resources, what have you. And some people just aren't ready. And so we're constantly thinking about how can we provide these different modalities that fill in the gaps and meet the immediate needs. Again, Ebb kind of has the ceiling in which, once we recognize that a member needs more support, that we don't try to continue to support that member if we feel like it's outside of the bounds of what Ebb has been built for. But I think again, for some members, it's just enough to help them, again, explore their emotions or get a better recommendation for what to do next. And hopefully over time, as we build that trust and we show them more of kind of what we have to offer, that we can get the member, if they need it, to more of, our higher order, higher acuity kind of offerings for our members. But I think the other thing I want to call out too is if you're thinking about developing AI as part of your strategy, doing some sort of like safety and risk assessment. I think a lot of times we think about opportunities in terms of what are the good things we can do, but I also think it's important that we challenge our products to also consider what are the bad ways in which my product can be used, or what are the implications.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a really important thing that we did in thinking about how we mitigate that, how we build for that. And again, and that might mean you're a little slower to market, but that might mean that you're also a more trusted product that is able to withstand the test of time. So building that into your process as you're thinking about should we or should we not use AI in this use case, I think is extremely important.
Man, you know what I love about like your guys' perspective or your way of thinking, and I'm not sure. I'm sure this is a company-wide cultural thing, but definitely yours from what I'm seeing. Like, I love the way that you guys, even right now, you just said it where you said some people are ready for therapy, some people are not. For those who are not ready for therapy, you can interact with Ebb or you can look at our content. And it's like, you guys don't just think about it in terms of, hey, our customers are the users who actively are seeking mental health and wellness, but it's almost like you're saying the whole population is on the spectrum
Mm-hmm.
of like fully aware and emotionally understanding the need for therapy versus not ready for it yet, but still we can try and engage them. And it seems like through your products and through your strategies, you guys are kind of trying to engage everyone across the spectrum in their own way. And I think that is so cool.
Yeah, and that's really what my team is focused on right now is how do we, inject a lot more education? Because my ethos is I don't want to create a product, even as a mental health product, that someone is so dependent on that they can't navigate their own mental health journey. Like I want to create a lot of independent, autonomous, like lifetime learners who are like, I know that I have all these things in my toolkit. I know where I need to go. I know it works for me. I know it doesn't work for me. And I've learned that all through Headspace. Because mental health is a lifelong journey,
Yep.
and so we want to make sure that whether or not the person is actively in the app or outside, doing the work elsewhere, that they have all the tools and they're aware of the tools and know what to seek. Because and this is where ebb actually gets its name from. Your mental health ebbs and flows, so
Yep.
sometimes you might need more help, sometimes you might need a little less, but knowing that we're always here to support and we have all the tools to support you, for us is our biggest thing that we're trying to work on in the product today. And like you said, creating this system in which we know where each member is at and what they're ready for, and creating those mechanisms that allow us to allow our members to tell us that as well.
That is awesome. Man, Corey, thank you so much. Honestly, it's been a great discussion so far. I'm looking forward to when we see each other in person, when we make our trip and visit you guys over there, but also for us to be able to have a discussion again soon at some point, because I think there's so much one can learn from you, not just obviously for ourselves and to take back for our own business and user differentiation, but for a lot of our clients, a lot of our guests to learn really about how in depth you guys are going, what all you guys are evaluating and taking into consideration, especially in the mental health and wellness space, in order to really drive effective change, right? And actually deliver effective value to users. I'd just maybe give another 30, 60 seconds. Guys, if anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to share, and we'll give it a minute so that you guys can get those in if you have any. I think it has been truly fabulous to have you here. I'd love to, see how it goes with Headspace in the future and how you guys develop. And I'm looking forward to seeing what's next.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me. And if anyone would like to connect on LinkedIn, happy to do so, to answer any follow-up questions as well.
Awesome. I think it looks like we're okay on questions. Thank you guys all for joining. Again, after the webinar, you will get an email with the recording as well in case you guys need it. It'll also have Corey and my LinkedIn contact so that you guys are able to connect with us in case you have any further questions or comments. Before we sign off, I see one more person is typing, and then we're good. Okay, awesome. Thank you guys again so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, Corey. It's been a pleasure, and
Awesome.
really looking forward to next time.
Thanks, y'all. Take care.